Now, this is really the beginning of the end times, as we know it. I mean, of course, the last days have been in many different ways, but what we know as the end times really began almost in secret. And it happens about in the 19th century, about 150 years ago. But here, let me tell you how it's set up. Moses, before he dies, he gives a word to Israel. It's going to be his last word to Israel. And what he does, he tells them that they're going to be scattered to the end. The Jewish people are going to be scattered to the ends of the earth, which exactly what happened. When I was an atheist, that's what blew me away. Everything the Bible said about the Jewish people has come true. Yes. And no other nation has gone through that. So scattered to the ends of the earth, they will be persecuted from one nation to the other. This is Moses. I mean, this is things that happen up to this day. Moses. So he says that all, and then he speaks about the end times. The first person to speak about the end times was Moses. He's the one who prophesies what's going to happen. Now, we know the end times are all linked. This is crucial for Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus to come back. These things have to happen. But Moses is the first one to talk about it. So he says that he says certain things, something's going to happen in the end, and then God is going to gather you back to the land in the end times. But he says there's going to be a sign, something's going to happen before that. He says, and this is in Deuteronomy, he says the land of Israel that was the promised land is going to become a desert. It's going to become a barren wasteland because of the curse of God. Because when the Jewish people are gone from the land becomes like a total wasteland. And he says, and it's exactly what happened. The land of Israel became the most desolate land on earth. Then it says a stranger is going to come from far away, and he's going to come to the land, and he's going to bear witness of the destruction, the desolation of the land, and the curse of God on the land. A stranger will bear witness, basically, to the world. It'll happen. And then, right after he comes, God will start gathering you back to the land. I mean, or after he comes. So therefore, a stranger has to come. So it's going to bear witness that it's hopeless, and that's when God's going to say, yes, but now I'm the God of the hopeless, and I'm going to do it now. So when it gets to its worst, so now the time that the land got to its worst state was the 19th century, because the Jewish people have been gone for 2,000 years. So did this happen? Could a man have come? Could a stranger have come, the sign appear, and come to the land and have done this? Well, the amazing thing, there was a man, and the man came from far away. This is the 19th century, far away land, and he was actually a journalist. He was working for a paper, and he said, you know what, there's a trip coming, one of the first trips ever to Israel. He said, let me go. I'll go across the world. I'll come to land, and I'll send you reports back. So he boards the ship. It's called the Quaker City. Goes, I believe they have a picture of that. It goes on a journey across the world, and he ends up in the land of Israel. Now, and in Israel, he looks at the land, it's desolate. He bears witness to the world of the desolation of Israel. Now, the thing about this man is, you all know this man. Yeah. The man who was the stranger was Mark Twain. Mark Twain was the man. Mark Twain he wrote Huckleberry Finn. We all learned about him. He's called the father of American literature. Mark Twain began with a biblical prophecy. Mark Twain was based on the prophecy of Moses. Moses said, and when Mark Twain, and he's a skeptic, so that makes it even more powerful because he's going to fulfill prophecy. Mark Twain comes to the land, and in the land, he keeps a notepad, and he writes down what he sees. And the words he writes down are the same words that Moses said he would say. So it says he will say, he will talk about how desolate, well, Mark Twain says a desolation, desolate. It will talk about how it's a scorching, it's a burning. Mark Twain uses the same words. At one point, Moses says he will say, there's not even a blade of grass growing. Mark Twain writes, there's not even a blade of grass growing. It's like he's speaking the words of, it's either he's speaking the words of Moses or Moses was speaking the words of Mark Twain by prophecy, but he has no idea that he is fulfilling this biblical prophecy. So he's in the land. I won't go through all that he says.
Oh my God!
It's unbelievable.
It's quick, all right. Give me a camera shot of this. This is my book. Can you see the underline on that? There's Mark Twain's business.
Yeah.
I mean, it talks about it from the Bible, from Moses to Mark Twain.
Exactly what.
Word for word back and forth. It will blow your mind. Here is this stranger. Go more about it.
And he you know, in the prophecy, it's speaking about how God cursed the land. And Mark Twain, a skeptic, at the end, he says, listen, he said, what do you expect? Can the curse of deity beautify a land? It is the curse of God, he says. Mark Twain. So he says all that. Now on top of that, so he fulfills, so it sets a time, because this is going to be the beginning of the end times. Some things are going to start happening right when he comes. But let me say something even more. I spoke about the Parasha mystery, that amazing, showing the sovereignty of God, that every event is in God's hands, that he actually has it on in these appointed words. Well, here's what happens. Mark Twain does the journey, completes the journey of the land. His goal is Jerusalem. He ends up in Jerusalem. It's his last full day and night in Jerusalem. It turns out it's a Sabbath day. So that means that there is an appointed word being read across the world at that moment.
Yes.
And so what is the appointed word that is read when Mark Twain fulfills that prophecy in Jerusalem? The appointed word read in every synagogue of the world is the prophecy of Moses saying, the stranger shall come to the land and bear witness of the desolation. The prophecy of him is being read, chanted all over the earth as it's being fulfilled. And literally, he's in Jerusalem. So he's walking the streets of Jerusalem. And from the synagogues, they're chanting the prophecy about him. And it's in Hebrew, so he has no idea. And they have no idea, because they don't know Mark Twain. And he's not the famous Mark Twain we know now. He walks the streets. It's being fulfilled as he does it. The stranger shall come from a far away land. Now, he does it, then he returns home. When he returns home, a publisher comes up to him and says, you know what, why don't you write a book about this? So he takes all this, and it becomes his first real book, is fulfilling the prophecy. Mark Twain becomes famous for the book where he fulfills the prophecy of Moses. So everything begins with the prophecy of Moses, even American literature as we know it. So it goes to the world, and then at the same time, all of a sudden, things begin to happen. When did this all happen? This happened in the year 1867. Okay, 1867. Now, is that significant? The Jubilee is that, that whoever owned the land has to begin releasing it. When the Jubilee comes, the release comes. There's a change. Well, who had the land at that time? I don't mean own. Who occupied it? It was the Ottoman Empire. It was a Muslim Ottoman Empire. There's no way they want to fulfill prophecies from the Bible about Israel, about God, about this coming of Messiah. But the amazing thing, if you look back, when did the Ottoman Empire, when did they gain the land? They gained the land in 1517. That means, now in the Bible, the number 7 is a number of completion. New thing. Well, if you count 7 jubilees from the moment they get it, they got the land, it comes to the year 1867. 1867 is the 7th jubilee from the time they got it. Exactly 7 jubilees. So now everything's going to begin in that year. The restoration is going to begin. God is going to plant the seeds, starting with this stranger, the visit of the stranger, that's going to come true, that's going to shake the world in the 20th century, change our lives up until this moment. It's all going to begin then. And so, in fact, you can count it out. I won't spill all of it, but if you count 50 years, what you get all the prophetic events. You get 1917, the giving of the land to the Jewish people. You get the Six-Day War. Everything is marked when the stranger comes. The stranger. Wow. Actually, so he comes to land. So now, when he comes, that same year, we won't get into the mysteries today, but or even this time, but when he comes in that same year, comes the other signs, strange signs start appearing in the land of Israel. The man with a measuring line. I won't go into it, but the sign that God gives. A man appears in the land with a measuring line. The lost city, a city that has been lost for 2,000 years, all of a sudden comes back 1867. In fact, I'll tell you, the other mystery there, the man with the measuring line, will actually stay in Jerusalem when Mark Twain is there, and they'll stay at the same building, but they don't know each other. And so God is weaving this all together. And also something will happen to the land, won't go into it, that will begin the restoration that we're going to see in the 20th century. It all begins then. Mark Twain writes the book in 1869. The next year, the first school to teach Jewish people how to farm the land of Israel in 2,000 years is established. Soon after that, the first Jewish people start returning to the land. They start returning, and the restoration begins, and it's going to go all the way up into the 20th century. And it's going to leak to the birth of Israel. But even more, something more than this, that near the end of his life, Mark Twain comes into contact with a man who's another writer. They have a friendship at the very end of his life. The man who he comes into contact with is Theodor Herzl, who is the father of Israel.
Yes.
He's the one who has the vision of Israel. Now, in the prophecy of Moses, the prophecy of the stranger leads to the prophecy of the return of Israel. So God takes Mark Twain, the stranger, puts them together with Theodor Herzl, who's the man who's going to lead to the rebirth of Israel. He's going to be the visionary, and they come together in the very crucial year that Herzl kind of gets a vision that there has to be a new nation of Israel. And Mark Twain is the one who said, it's hopeless, it will never be again. Well, now God puts them together with a man where it's all going to come together. But there's more to it, because not only that, Mark Twain, when Israel's going to be voted, is going to be coming back into the world,
yes,
the president of America is going to recognize it. We mentioned Truman. But Truman said the reason he did it, he was wavering back and forth, is I believe he went to the Oval Office, he saw a word. And the word, he said, when I read that word, I knew I had to do it. The word was a quote of the words from Mark Twain, the stranger. So Mark Twain actually was part of Israel coming back into the world.
Yes.
God used all of it together. But not only that, there was another appointed word, because when they opened the scrolls, they opened up the scroll of Moses and the scroll of the prophets. So there was one other word that was proclaimed on that day when the stranger was in the land. And that the word was from the prophets. And, Mark Twain said, this is desolate, desolate, hopeless desolation. The word says, this land shall no longer be a desolation. It will again blossom. It will again come back. God's saying, I will restore this land. So it was all there, but even something more than that, beyond that. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people have been praying every day. It's part of their prayers. Lord, hear our prayer. Hear our prayer. You remember us. Hear our prayer. Hear our prayer, and restore Israel, restore Jerusalem, bring us back to the land. So we'll have mercy. So the two things were, Lord, hear our prayer, and be merciful and restore us. Hear our prayer, be merciful. Mark Twain was born years before as a baby. His parents gave him didn't call him Mark Twain. That was the name he came up with. But his real name was actually Hebrew. Samuel, Shmuel, Samuel. Samuel means the Lord has heard.
Oh.
And Clemens means and has been merciful.
Wow.
Wow.
That's why names are so important.
His whole life, even the birth of a baby and the giving of the name to a baby, was all destined from before the world began. Before the world began.